A CNBC.com report details that Tesla began buying aluminum from a Russian company, Rusal, starting in 2020. Tesla, like many other large automakers, has ties to Russian suppliers. The founder of Rusal, Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, is currently being sanctioned. The author of that story, Laura Kolodny, joins us now with some more details. Laura, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Is there any evidence that perhaps Tesla has ceased doing business with Rusal recently, since the invasion started?
I spoke with employees and former employees who had insight into all the supply chain issues, and there was no indication that they had severed that relationship yet. But global supply chain issues are complicated, and it takes time to find substitutes or to change a business relationship like that. So I wouldn't expect anything to suddenly change.
There is immense pressure. I mean, already Elon Musk had sort of tipped his hand to inflationary pressures that are very, very difficult to deal with. He talked about nickel, and if anybody had a nickel line, please let me know. So he's probably under tremendous pressure on top of having to pull out of the Rusal agreement.
I don't know if they will pull out of the Rusal agreement. Sanctions could demand it, or they might make an ethical call. But sometimes there is simply no other supply of a certain quality, and companies will decide to keep doing business with, a supplier in an area where there's conflict. In the past, Tesla has also relied on, and they still primarily rely on, other suppliers. Rusal is not their only vendor for these metals. They work with Hydro, which has operations throughout Europe. So they may not be as reliant on Rusal as they would with a single source supplier, but we have yet to see if they will sever that relationship.
Laura, it's Karen. Thanks for being on. Would you know if they can get out of the contract, if there's a force majeure or war or something that would allow them to exit if they wanted to?
Well, I have seen invoices and other internal communications referencing the Rusal aluminum coming into their German factory in Brandenburg, which is soon to open. I have not seen the exact terms of the contract, so I do not know.
And finally, Laura, do the other automakers also, I mean, you mentioned the story that they all do business with a lot of these suppliers. Tesla's not alone in this, is it?
Tesla is not alone. I can't speak to the other automakers' relationships with Rusal in particular, but a global supply chain research firm called Interos did some analysis for CNBC, and they found that the four of the largest domestic automakers in the U.S. all have at least one relationship with a Russian supplier, and 13 Russian companies are supplying automakers with, something on a direct basis, most likely raw materials.
All right, Laura, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for your reporting. Laura Kolodny, you can read her full story on CNBC.com. All right, there's a difference, though, between Tesla and some of the other global automakers, Guy, and that is you don't hear Mary Barra on Twitter challenging Vladimir Putin to man-to-man combat, with Ukraine being the stake. I mean, Tesla has really gone out there. Elon Musk specifically has really gone out there to back Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I think he challenged Vladimir Putin to a fight, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. And your point is well taken. And I would say, and I think we all agree, Tesla's far more than just an auto manufacturing company. I think we've all come to that conclusion correctly. But it's not just Tesla. I think it's important to point out, I mean, aluminum is in so many different industries. And part of what's going on here, Russia-Ukraine, is not just for, again, bring back Russian empire. I mean, this is a commodity play at a global level as well. Russia, obviously, on one end, but Ukraine, I think, is the fourth largest producer of commodities on the planet. How do you trade this thing? Well, Tesla traded down to 700 a week or so ago, bounced back up to that prior all-time high, 903, and here we are at 766. The ranges have been defined for you. I think if it gets back down to 700 again, you buy it for a trade once more.
Yeah, I mean, the thought that perhaps other automakers who also, source from Russia could be forced at some point to pull out. I mean, Jeff, the stocks are already dealing with the inflationary pressure aspect of things.
Yeah, it's a little bit insult to injury here for sure. And just on the Tesla front, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about the valuations just being too high. I think you could actually trade down to between 400 and 500 before all of this is over. Just, looking at the chart, to my eye, that's what it looks like. And I also think it's interesting, too. I mean, I don't know this to be certain. But if you look at some of these ESG strategies and such, I mean, I would imagine Tesla would find its way into some of those. And if there's an issue relative to exposure to Russia, I wonder what happens there if they could end up getting kicked out of some of those fund strategies. Just something interesting to think about. But more to your point, Ford was a final trade of mine a couple of weeks ago. It was back down to rising support. It's back down to 8 times earnings. I mean, looking pretty good, but the chart is breaking down. They're dealing with this issue. This is only making it more difficult. But if I had to pick between the two, I would certainly rather a Ford versus a Tesla at these levels.
I think the question here for Tesla is where does it lose and how much does it lose? Does it lose more on the social, ethical front if it keeps sourcing from Russia, or does it lose more on the sales front if it has to either not supply the cars that are in demand or raise prices? Karen, where would you stand on that?
Okay, he did just would you rather himself. I know you saw that, right?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure. It's it's very tricky for all of them, right? I don't know if maybe the answer is do they have an intermediary that somehow, a Glencore or somebody like that somehow solves the problem? I don't know. I mean, how much of the multiple of Tesla is the magic of Elon? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't short it, but I'm not long either. Too expensive for me.